Have you ever sat in your favorite chair, the sun pouring in through the curtains, and suddenly felt the silence of the room so loudly that it hurt? Not because it was peaceful, but because it reminded you that no one would be coming through that door today. Or maybe tomorrow. Or maybe even next week. The phone's been quiet. The days feel longer. And somehow, even in retirement, there's a sense that you've been left behind. Not just by people, but by purpose. By the life that once felt so full. You might remember when the house was never quiet, when children's voices echoed through the halls, when every day had somewhere to go, someone to feed, something to fix. Now the stillness feels like both a relief and a weight. You finally have space, time, but what do you do with it when there's no one else to share it with? Living alone after 60 isn't always what people imagine. There's freedom, yes, but there's also a quiet ache no one talks about. That subtle question lingering in your chest. Is this it for me now? I want to say something to you, from my heart to yours. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you are without meaning. Just because your calendar is open doesn't mean your life is empty. The truth is, this stage of life, this quieter chapter, holds its own kind of power. And often, it starts not with grand gestures, but with small, gentle habits. Let me tell you about Grace. She's 67, lives in a cozy little apartment by the river, and lost her husband 8 years ago. Her 2 sons live in different states. Busy lives, good intentions, and occasional check-ins. But most days, it's just her and the sound of her own footsteps. For a long time, she filled the space with TV reruns and reheated dinners. She told herself she was resting, but really, she was wilting. Until one morning, she woke up and made her bed. Not because she had to, but because she decided she deserved to see something beautiful first thing. That single act, so small, began to change the rhythm of her day. She added fresh flowers to her kitchen table, started keeping a little journal of one thing each day that made her smile. Even if it was just a bird landing on her windowsill. It wasn't magic, but it was movement. Life coming back in, not from outside, but from within. The first habit that quietly transforms the lonely into the peaceful is presence. Not distraction, not busyness, but the kind of presence where you decide, this moment is still mine. This day is still sacred. When you drink your morning tea slowly, eyes closed, breathing in the steam and the calm. When you pause at the window and let the light hit your face like a blessing. That's not nothing. That's a sacred claiming of your own time. And when you do that, something deep within you starts to feel honored. You don't need a house full of guests to feel alive, and you need to treat yourself as someone worth spending time with. Frank, who's 72, told me once that after his wife passed, he started talking to himself out loud, just so the silence wouldn't swallow him whole. At first, he thought he was losing it. But over time, he realized he wasn't crazy. He was reconnecting with himself, with the sound of his own thoughts. He started writing them down, journaling, telling stories from his childhood, things he hadn't thought about in decades. That little spiral notebook became a window back into himself, a reminder that even if no one's around to hear your stories, they're still worth telling. The second habit is something deeply powerful, yet almost always overlooked: speaking kindly to yourself out loud. In the mirror, in your journal, in your mind. You might not even realize how cruel your inner voice has become over the years, always whispering, you should be doing more, or no one cares about you now. But that voice, it lies. You are still deeply valuable. You still matter, but you won't believe that unless you start reminding yourself daily. So when you pass by the mirror tomorrow morning, I want you to say something gentle to yourself. Try this. You're doing better than you think. You're not invisible. I see you. It may feel silly at first, but you know what? You've comforted others for decades. You've been the encourager, the steady one. Now it's time to turn that care inward. And this is not selfish. It's sacred. You see, the world around us has gotten so loud, so fast, so digital, and when you're living alone, it's easy to feel like you've been forgotten in all that noise. But let me tell you, there's something deeply powerful about stillness. When you begin to show up for yourself with quiet rituals, gentle routines, and words of compassion. You're no longer waiting to be remembered. You're remembering yourself, and there's a kind of glow that returns to people when they do this. I've seen it in Margaret, who started each day lighting a candle and saying a quiet prayer of thanks, even when she didn't feel grateful. In Ethan, who began taking short morning walks just to feel the air on his face. No headphones, just the birds and the gravel under his shoes. In those small moments, they began to feel whole again, not because someone else filled the void, but because they stopped running from it and started tending to it. Like a garden, sometimes healing doesn't look like breakthroughs. It looks like washing your face gently, like making your own bed, like smiling at yourself for no reason at all, like humming an old song you used to love while stirring your coffee. Living alone after 60 doesn't mean settling into loneliness. It means slowly, day by day, redefining what joy looks like now. And often, it's not found in company, but in connection to yourself, to your environment, to small acts of meaning. And so, if today felt empty, it's okay. That happens. But what if tomorrow morning you began with one small choice, just one that reminded you, I still matter. This day still belongs to me. There's something tender that happens when you stop rushing through your own presence and begin to notice how long you've been putting yourself last. For years, perhaps decades, you might have made sure everyone else was okay, kids, spouse, friends, neighbors, before even considering your own needs. And maybe that felt natural at the time. Maybe you told yourself, that's just what love looks like. But somewhere in that endless giving, something quietly slipped away. And it was you. I want to share something about Margaret. You've heard about her already. Her mornings now start with lighting a candle and whispering gratitude, even on days when her body aches or the phone stays silent. But it wasn't always like that. For a long time after her divorce, Margaret didn't know who she was if she wasn't needed. She wandered her days like a ghost in her own life, checking in on her adult children, offering to help with their kids, baking for church events, volunteering every time someone asked. Not because she truly wanted to, but because it made her feel less invisible. And yet, she felt exhausted, unseen, resentful. She told me, with tears in her eyes, I didn't know how to say no without feeling like I was letting everyone down. That's the hard truth many of us face after 60. We've become so practiced in saying yes to keep the peace, to feel useful, to feel loved, that saying no feels like a betrayal. But here's the question that changed everything for Margaret, and maybe it will for you too. When was the last time you made a decision based solely on what you needed, not what others expected? You see, the third habit that begins to shift everything quietly is learning to pause before you say yes. Not refusing everything, not walling yourself off, but taking a breath to ask, do I really want to do this? And if the answer is no, letting that be enough. Respect doesn't come from bending until you break. It comes from standing softly but firmly in your truth. And that's not always easy, because for many of us, especially women, being agreeable was once praised. We were taught to smooth things over, to smile even when we were hurting. But there is nothing more powerful than a woman or a man who can kindly, calmly, and confidently say, that doesn't work for me. Frank struggled with this too. After his children moved away, he still tried to organize family gatherings, holidays, birthdays. He made the plans, bought the food, sent the messages. And so often, they'd cancel or come late, or not show at all. And every time, he swallowed the disappointment until one day, he stopped planning, not out of bitterness, but because he realized he didn't want to keep putting his joy in someone else's hands. So he began a new tradition, Sunday dinners, just for himself. He'd cook something he liked, pour a glass of wine, light a candle, and eat slowly, with music playing in the background. Eventually, the kids started calling more. One of them asked, "Hey Dad, are you still doing your fancy Sunday dinners?" And just like that, they became curious again. Because here's the quiet truth. People are drawn to those who are rooted in themselves, who don't chase love, but radiate warmth, who don't beg to be included, but extend invitations with or without expectations. The fourth habit that brings unexpected happiness is honoring your own rhythms. You are not a machine. You don't need to be productive every hour to be worthy. Some days will be slow. Some mornings, you'll want to sleep in. Some afternoons, you might just sit and stare out the window. And that's okay. That's not laziness, that's healing. There is a deep beauty in creating rituals that feel good to you. Maybe it's a walk at sunset. Maybe it's listening to old jazz records. Maybe it's watering your plants while humming softly to them. You don't need permission. You just need presence. And in that space, something amazing happens. Your sense of self returns. You remember who you were before the world told you what to be. You remember the part of you that loved to paint, or dance, or write, or tend to flowers. That part never left. It just got buried under years of tending to everyone else's needs. Chloe, who turned 70 last spring, decided she would dress up every Wednesday, just for herself, a full outfit, earrings, scarf, lipstick. She'd walk to the little bakery on the corner and buy one sweet treat, sit by the window, and savor it. At first, people looked at her curiously. Then they started smiling. Someone even asked, "Are you celebrating something?" And she replied with a laugh, "Yes, me." That's the kind of quiet rebellion that transforms your life after 60. Not anger, not defiance, but soft joy, tender strength, choosing to be your own reason for celebrating. Because here's the secret. Happiness after 60 doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up in the little moments when you stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. It lives in the decisions you make when no one else is watching. It blooms in the quiet dignity of saying, "I am still here, and I still matter." You don't have to move mountains. You don't need a crowd. What you need is to begin tending to the soil of your own spirit. Daily, gently, patiently, and like any good garden, the blooms will come, not overnight, but they will come. So tomorrow, when you wake up, take a breath before rushing into what's expected of you. Ask instead, what do I want today? What does my soul need? And then give yourself permission to begin there. Something remarkable begins to happen when you stop measuring your worth by how much you're needed and start noticing how it feels to simply be. The world doesn't shift in a grand, dramatic way. There's no applause, no flashing lights, but something inside you, something quiet and deep, starts to settle. And in that stillness, dignity grows. Grace told me she hadn't realized how long she'd been waiting for someone to give her permission to live fully again. After her husband passed, her days became a repetition of duties, checking in, making meals, tidying up, not because she loved doing them, but because they gave her a sense of purpose, even if hollow. But as she slowly began lighting that morning candle, journaling her feelings, dressing nicely for no one but herself, her voice changed. She didn't talk faster. She didn't talk louder. She talked steadier, clearer, with presence. That's the fifth habit, one that's less about action and more about energy. Embodying calm self-respect. When you stop chasing acknowledgement and begin honoring your own pace, others notice. Not because you're demanding it, but because you're carrying yourself like someone who finally knows they don't have to prove anything. There's something magnetic about that. It draws people closer, not out of guilt, but out of admiration. You might not even realize how much you've given away over the years. How many times you quieted your voice to keep the peace. How often you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. But now you have the chance to speak from a place of truth. To walk into your kitchen, into your garden, into your day, like it's sacred ground. Because it is. Jack is 74, a retired school principal. For decades, he led others, managed people, mentored students, made decisions. But after retiring and losing touch with his children, who got swept away by their own busy lives, he found himself staring at the walls of his small home, wondering if everything he had built meant anything anymore. One day, while dusting off old keepsakes in the garage, he came across a wooden chess set he hadn't touched in years. He remembered teaching his grandson to play when the boy was just 5. That memory made him smile and ache. So Jack started playing again, not competitively, just himself, aboard, and the quiet joy of remembering who he once was. Then, every Saturday, he brought the set to the local community center, not to teach, but just to be there. Others joined in. Some played, some just watched. But slowly, week after week, Jack began to feel something return. his sense of influence not in the way of power, but in presence. You see, when you live for yourself, quietly and fully, you become someone others want to be around. Not because you offer something, but because you radiate something, that calm certainty, that soft strength, that rare peace. And that's the beauty of independence, not the kind that's bitter or defiant, but the kind that says, I've learned how to be whole with or without you. That's what Emily discovered too. She used to wait for her adult daughter to call. She would sit by the phone, hoping for a message, watching old videos of birthdays and family trips, replaying old laughter like it was a life raft. But one day, she didn't check the phone. She didn't even glance at it. Instead, she went to a pottery class she had signed up for weeks earlier, and for the first time in years, she made something with her hands that had nothing to do with obligation. It was messy, lopsided, imperfect, but it was hers. And after that, something shifted in her daughter too. Not overnight, but over time. The calls came more regularly. There was curiosity again. Not pity, not obligation, but genuine interest. Because here's what so many forget. When you stop asking to be noticed and start nurturing your joy, others feel that energy. They sense you're no longer waiting on them to be okay. And suddenly they feel free to come closer. You don't need to lecture. You don't need to beg for visits or explain your loneliness. What you need is to be the calm in your own life. The steady presence, the lighthouse, not the storm. So what does that look like? Truly, it looks like setting your table, even if it's just for one. Lighting a candle not for mood, but for memory, for the sacredness of being alive today. It looks like dancing in your kitchen when no one's watching, singing to yourself in the shower, smiling at your reflection without rushing to fix your hair. It looks like telling yourself, this moment is mine, every time the old ache of absence starts to rise. Because here's the truth most people miss. You don't need to fill the space of your life with noise to feel alive. You need to let life meet you in the quiet. Hannah once told me, I used to dread the silence after my husband died. Now, I welcome it. It's where I remember him most clearly, and where I've begun to find myself again. That's not sadness. That's healing. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are in a new season, and seasons are meant to be honored, not rushed through. So if you find yourself waking up tomorrow and wondering, what's the point? Try this. Make one beautiful thing, a meal, a poem, a moment. Make your bed, make your tea with care. Make eye contact with your own soul and say, I'm still here, and I'm still learning to love this life. That's where happiness lives now, not in how others respond to you, but in how you respond to yourself. If you've stayed with me this far, I just want to pause and say thank you. Truly thank you. It means the world to me that you allowed these words, this quiet conversation, to sit with you a while. Maybe you listened with a heavy heart. Maybe you smiled once or twice, remembering something lost or something you'd almost forgotten about yourself. Maybe this was the first time in a long time that you felt like someone was speaking to you, not about you. And if that's the case, I want you to know you're not alone in feeling alone. There are so many people, just like you, in little homes and apartments around the world, sipping their tea slowly, staring at framed photos a bit longer than they used to, wondering quietly, does anyone really see me anymore? I see you, and I know that your story, your voice, your journey, it still matters. Deeply, living alone after 60 isn't something many people prepare for. It's not something we're taught to celebrate, but it's time we changed that, because this season of life, with all its stillness and solitude, carries a wisdom and beauty that few others ever get to touch. This isn't the ending. It's a quieter beginning. And maybe, just maybe, if you let yourself follow even one of these habits, a morning pause, a kind word to your reflection, a small act of beauty done just for you, you'll start to feel that gentle shift inside. The one that says, I am enough, I always was, and this life of mine still has light in it. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You only need to stand firmly in your light. So today, I want to invite you, if this video made you feel seen, even in a small way, stay with me. Let's walk this journey together. Click subscribe if you'd like to be part of a space that honors your voice, your pace, and your worth. And if you feel like it, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Has your relationship with your children changed over the years? Have you found something big or small that brings you peace in your alone time? What helps you feel whole again? Sometimes, just writing it down helps, and sometimes, someone else reading your story will feel a little less alone because of it. There's something beautiful about connection that doesn't demand, doesn't fix, doesn't pressure, just hold space. And that's what I hope this corner of the internet can be for you. A soft landing place. A place where you're reminded that your life still matters, not for what you do, not for who you help, but simply because you are here. So wherever you are tonight, whether the room is quiet or filled with the hum of memory, I hope you'll carry one truth with you. You are not past your prime. You are not finished. You are a whole, living, breathing soul who still deserves tenderness, beauty, and joy, not later, not someday, but now, right here, in this moment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And until next time, be kind to yourself. You are worth it. Always have been.